Welcome to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast. Use the power of discovering new habits to create success in all areas of life. Body, fitness and nutrition, being, spirituality, passion and purpose, balance, marriage, kids and relationships, business, marketing, sales, leadership and systems. Transform your life by learning how habits work. And now your host, a husband, father, entrepreneur, trainer, coach, and warrior, Jesse Ewell.
Welcome back to another episode of the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ewell, and today we're going to be doing a question and answer podcast. This is specifically where guests have submitted questions and they want to dive into some of these questions that are going to come up today. And I am going to do my best at answering these questions from my experience and my perspective of going through things. What I don't want you to do is take my advice as medical advice, but simply through my experience and my years of testing some of these things and also learning these things through different protocols or just through experience in life. So question one, which is a big one. This is submitted from Ben. Why is testosterone therapy treatment so popular, and what does treatment look like to the layman? So I think one of the reasons why testosterone therapy is so it's so popular today simply because it's accessible, it's easy, it's kind of a quick fix, and given mind you, I started using testosterone at 16, 17 years old. So I do have a lot of experience with it. I've used it in bodybuilding. I've used it for sports. I've used it for low testosterone. I've used creams. I've used pellets, shots, literally all of it. And the one reason why now today more than ever it's popular is, like I said, it's a quick fix. And it kind of deals with getting someone back up to an optimal level quickly, but not actually looking at, well, what is the underlying cause of maybe why it is as low as it is. Now, the other thing is it's not just a male hormone. We really all need this to optimize our life and imbalance. So just understand that, you know, this is something that you can have low testosterone, which a lot of people nowadays do simply because they, and a lot of people that I talk to and get to coach, they're kind of stuck in this fight or flight scenario to where they have like a constant stress impacting their levels. Sleep can actually impact this. People sleep less and less now more than before. Not only that, diet and exercise. So I always kind of look at the big main factors that go into low testosterone would be, you know, sleep or lack of sleep, you know, bad diet, eating processed foods, and then, you know, lack of exercise. Obviously, there's other reasons. So if you're, you know, maybe doing all of those things, some other reasons could be, you know, like I said, chronic stress is a huge one. You know, maybe being overweight can also impact it, sitting down at a desk. You know, those could be some of them. And then you can get into vitamins, like vitamin D levels could be low. You know, you could also have a lot of, you know, inflammation in your body, things like that. But some natural ways, and here's what I would say. You can have your testosterone checked. And I would say that, you know, nowadays, you know, someone who's probably in their 40s, late 30s, 50s is probably going to have low testosterone. And I'm going to say probably 60 to 70%, if not a little bit more. But before you go straight to a synthetic testosterone, I would exhaust all attempts to do this naturally. So, number one, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep consistently every night. Number two, exercising, making sure that part of that routine is, lifting heavy weights, doing kind of compound movements such as, kind of your big lifts, which are squat, deadlifts, bench press, rows, pull ups, things like that, things that actually promote muscle growth, sprinting. So there's, a lot of slower distance cardio can actually do the opposite. Endurance events tend to lower your testosterone levels. So actually being able to mix in both of those. If you do like to do those, great. Just make sure you're using a couple times a week where you're getting in a lift or even a sprint workout and you're lifting some of your major muscle groups. Also diet. So having a diet in, fresh fruits, vegetables, grass-fed meats, lean proteins, and as you're doing this, eating as organic as possible. Not only that, but, having wild caught fish, some other things that actually can improve your testosterone level is, decreasing stress. So one of the ways that you can do that is actually through meditation. There's also some supplements you can use, such as zinc, vitamin D, adding in, making sure you're taking vitamin C, having B vitamins, magnesium, which are some ways to also help decrease stress. But a lot of times, like, the reason our testosterone levels are low are not necessarily because they're low. It's because of, our diet, our sleep, and our stress, our current exercise routine or lack thereof. So exhausting all of those, then stepping into some natural supplements such as like DIM. Also, doing some liver detox. There's, things you can do such as coffee enemas. Also, just eating more of a balanced diet to where you're getting in plenty of fruits, vegetables, but also plenty of meats and things like that. And then one of the things that I've found that's worked really well is deer antler velvet. I've used it back in kind of my late to 20s, early 30s. And then also just kind of recently started using it a few months ago. But those are some natural ways to increase your testosterone level. But I would always start with kind of your big main factors, which nobody wants to do these. So if you went to the doctor and said, "Hey, I think my testosterone's low," they check it, it is low. They're probably not going to say, "Hey, you need to make sure you're sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. You need to make sure you're exercising 5 days a week, and you need to make sure you're eating these types of foods." And those are kind of the factors that will go into all of this. So the reason why it's became popular is because, one, you can make money on it and people will see results immediately. So they'll feel like things are changing. Again, this is a synthetic product. So it is actually, if you're doing this and going to these clinics, doctors, there's a lot of research and there's a lot of people doing this correctly. But there's a lot of people out there not doing this correctly where they're just giving you stuff. Remember this, is it's shutting down your natural production of testosterone yourself, which if it does that, then you're going to have a very hard time kicking that back up by producing it on your own. So just remember, it's kind of like once you go on it, you're having to do that to constantly keep it up. Next question. So this is by Erky. And how important is cholesterol numbers and the overall number? So just understanding like how important that is, plus what's a simple way to reduce cholesterol. So your overall number for cholesterol isn't super important, although it is important, but it's what is your LDL number? what is your HDL number, your total cholesterol, and then also your triglycerides. I've had over 200 cholesterol for quite a few years. The things that I'm really paying attention to are my triglycerides, which mine are really low, and then my LDL and HDL, just making sure those numbers are as low or as high as possible to balance that out. But I will tell you that my total cholesterol is over 200. And I think earlier this year I was at like 270. And so the overall number isn't as important, but it is a marker to go trace back and just make sure that some of these other areas like triglycerides is at a really low number, your LDL is at a really low number, and your HDL, you want it to be about a higher number, which is obviously the better. But in all of this, I like to think of a lot of these tests as they're indicators to look into another area. And just as we talked about, before with low testosterone, is if we just treat testosterone based off low testosterone, we're not actually treating the symptom. We're treating the symptom instead of the actual cause. And so this is a similar fashion. If we're just looking at total cholesterol, we're just treating the symptom and not the actual cause. And so tracing that back to other numbers. So testosterone, if I come in with a low number, I'm going to look at vitamin D levels. I'm going to look at, stress. I'm going to look at exercise. I'm going to look at a lot of things inside of that and try to figure out, okay, well, what's really going on? Same thing with cholesterol is, really looking at diet. Is it processed? You're eating a lot of processed foods. One of the things that I realized when I got mine up to 270 was I was doing a lot of bulletproof coffee, MCT oil, and grass-fed butter, which, grass-fed butter is better than regular butter, but again, it's still fat. MCT oil is better than regular butter, but it's still fat. My cholesterol went up to 270. One of the ways that I got it down, and my experience with it was, as I started eating green vegetables and fruits till about 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the day. And I watched that number decrease by about 70. And then also eating too much red meat, I would see that skyrocket. Now, you'll have a lot of people on keto or a lot of people on carnivore that may have something different to say. I'm just telling you from my experience what made mine go up. And I'm just telling you ways that I decreased it. One was doing more green vegetables and fruits till about 2 o'clock every day, and then adding in leaner types of protein like chicken and fish. Coffee enemas are great for this, detoxifying the liver. But diet's a major thing. Stress is a major thing. And then detoxing your liver is a major thing on doing this. Coffee enemas are not very fun, but they do work and they do help with detoxification. Also, doing regular saunas. This is also a great thing for increasing your testosterone level too, is just like cleaning out your body. I think a lot of times, if you look at anything on blood work from testosterone level, cholesterol, kind of your main markers, is looking at sleep is always super important. That's where we recover. 2 is diet. And 3 is exercise. Those are kind of your big 3 things that really impact. And then the 4th one would obviously be water, which is one of the ways that you're going to begin to detox your body. And so total cholesterol isn't super important, but it is an indicator to kind of look back at my LDL, HDL, triglycerides. And then if those are high, there's other indicators under those that we may want to go back and look through. Again, I'm not a doctor, but this is the experience I've had. I have had higher cholesterol above the 200, and the way that I did get it down is just how I walked you through this. But I think green vegetables, fruits, eating more of those during the day, and having more of your leaner proteins later on during the day. Next question. What are your thoughts on the myth of work-life balance? Well, I think number one, if you are a entrepreneur, business owner, if you're working as a manager, or if you're just working in a job, if you just work the minimum 8 hours a day, that means we're working 30% or around 33% of our day is going to be in our business. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, maybe you work, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day, you're now getting up over, probably that 50% of the day. So it's very hard to have a balance of, hey, I'm going to be at home the same amount of time I'm going to be at work. I'm going to spend the same amount of time at work as I spend with my family. It's really not possible to do that. If it is possible, it's because you've, either made enough money to where you've sold your business. You already have everything in place, but it's taken you a while to get to there. Or possibly, you work 8 hours a day, 6 hours a day, whatever that is. But it's very hard, to have that work-life balance in exact time. The one thing I would tell you to really work on and strive for is not so much work-life balance, but more so how much time are you spending, you know, uh, intentionally with your wife, your kids, and things like that. And it's more about quality, not about quantity. And so that's the biggest thing I've found is it's more about the quality of time I'm spending with my wife and my kids over the quality of time I'm spending, or equal amount of hours. I think as an entrepreneur or business owner, this is something that I'm constantly having to juggle. Many of the clients I work with, they're constantly having to try to figure out how to balance these out. The best way that I can say that is, make sure you're doing regular date nights with your wife, you're doing regular date nights with your kids. When you're home, you're putting up your phone, and you are being intentional about when you're going to be home, what you're doing with your kids, making sure you're making it to their events, their sports, their activities, making sure that you're also, giving your spouse time to themselves, and making sure also that you're making time for yourself outside of work and outside of the family. Um, but if you're looking at a pie chart, I don't think you're ever going to look at it and say, okay, I'm going to spend 25% of my time on body, my fitness, my health, 25% of my time in my spirituality, 25% of my time in my relationship, and 25% of my time at work. Just knowing, how much I'm working. I come to work a lot of times 6, 7 a.m. and I'm getting out of work at, 5, 6 p.m. at night. So I'm spending, 50% of my day at my office at work. So it's very hard to create that balance. I obviously, when you don't own your own business and you actually work for someone else, they may control that. But I would just say, look at the intentionality you're spending. It's more about quality than about quantity, and really making sure that you're spending that quality time in your fitness, in your spirituality, with your your spouse, your kids, whatever that is, however that looks like at home with your family. And then when you're at work, you're intentionally spending time at work. The other thing is this. One of the questions was, what has been the most profound impact, resource, questions, insights that's given you clarity and purpose? So purpose is this thing I thought would get delivered, and maybe be a scroll that I would get delivered to me at my front door one day. However, what I realized is, number one, I was living my purpose. I just never really stopped and gave myself credit or thought about what it really was at the time. When I really started to think about purpose, it was probably 6, 7 years ago where it was like, man, I'm doing my purpose. I'm working in the gym. I'm helping people, changing people's lives. That changed into, once I got into Wake Up Warrior, is I actually started coaching men through that. And so that kind of transformed into not just working on one area of life, but working on multiple, working with, married men with kids, to now where I get to work with, married couples, and people who are married that have children that are just trying to figure out how do I live to my full potential in my life, But one of the things that's always helped me is just to kind of go back through that question is like, am I living my purpose? And reminding myself to ask myself that a couple times a year and just see the progression of my purpose over the last 7 or 8 years. And to realize that my purpose today may not be my purpose a year from now, but if I'm evolving, then my purpose is evolving. And so I think the main thing is as we evolve in who we are, our purpose is going to evolve. And just every once in a while asking, yourself or myself, hey, am I really truly living my purpose, and just getting back in alignment with what that is, 2 to 3 times a year, and making sure that you're on that path. I also think, as far as a resource, is having clearly defined yearly goals, having clearly defined quarterly goals, and just revisiting those often gives you that clarity and keeps you on track with that. All right, final question. Anthony, relationship between producing and marriage. When you are not producing as a man, it affects your wife. So one of the things that I realized is, my energy affects my wife when I'm not feeling my best or in my confidence. When I'm not producing, it actually affects my wife from a stress point. She can tell energetically I'm off. And so I think the biggest thing is when you have, when you have a wife that either is working with you in your business, maybe a stay-at-home CEO mom, they manage a lot of the energy at home. And so if you come home and you're not producing at a level, that confidence shows up at home and energy, and it does affect our spouse, our wives. No different than if it was your wife coming home and you were staying at home. But I think the energy that goes into the marriage and goes into the relationship is always affected if we're not producing at the level that we feel like we could be or want to be. And so I think that's a huge thing for us when we look at this is, just making sure that we're communicating with our spouse what's going on. We're communicating, hey, maybe I'm frustrated about what's going on in the business. I'm not producing at the level I feel like or think I should be. And sometimes just being able to have that conversation with your spouse and opening that up is super important because it gets you both on the same page. Also, I know this, if you're both working and both working on producing, obviously there's a level of confidence. When it comes to a man, I always think of like hunting. The man went out hunting and came home and had no meat to give to his family, he would probably feel like he was a little bit depressed, like he didn't get the food for the day for his family. And so business is no different. If we go out hunting and we expect to make money or to bring home something that we can feed our family, realize this, that we're going to have this loss of confidence, or we're going to feel like we didn't produce or didn't do what we were supposed to. So as you're working through this, think about how you can change that into an outcome. Like, what do I want to bring home today, or what do I want to go sell today, or what do I want to produce today, and really focusing on that, versus worrying about our wife and maybe what she's doing or not doing, because sometimes I think that kind of takes us out of our game. But co-creation is a real thing. Co-creation means sometimes we have to have conversations with our spouse that we don't always want to, but I think it's important we have that open communication. But again, production affects your wife. Lack of production affects your wife because it affects you and it affects your energy. And if you bring that into the home, of course, it's going to affect her and it's going to affect your family. So those are it for the questions today. If you guys want to submit some questions every single week, that I do this once a month, feel free. If you guys are looking to connect further with a group of like-minded people, join myself and so many others in the Habit-Based Lifestyle Secrets group, where I will be dropping daily habits to help you live your full potential. If you want to be one of our next case studies and begin living this habit-based lifestyle, feel free to reach out to me, Jesse at habitbasedlifestyle.com. Until next episode, have a great day.